The Florida Panthers return home to Sunrise, Florida for this series is tied at 2. They are looking to take a 3-2 series lead before heading back to Washington for Game 6. On this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we bring in Jacob Winans from PantherParkway.com. We get his thoughts on the series, thoughts on a possible discipline for a Washington Capitals player, and we talk about luck in sports, how it helps teams win championships, and we preview Game 5, all on this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to this Wednesday, May 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from PantherParkway.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Don't forget to also follow the national show Locked On NHL and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark, where they'll be covering all the postseason activities around the National Hockey League. So like I said at the top, the Florida Panthers return home. They're back in Sunrise, Florida. 2-2 is where the series stands. Home ice advantage is back after their thrilling 3-2 overtime win, come from behind win in Game 4 against the Washington Capitals. And it's been a great, let's not forget that this is a roller coaster. This is a journey. The downs that a lot of us felt after Game 3 were very valid. And the Panthers winning Game 4, now the vibes are good. Or as a lot of us say, immaculate. And now that we're feeling good about ourselves, the Florida Panthers are feeling good. The momentum feels like it's on their side. And what an opportunity for the Florida Panthers here as they are back at home at FLA Live Arena tonight. And of course, let me bring in my guest on the show, the usual Wednesday guest host with me on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It is Jacob Winans on this Winans Wednesday. Jacob, how are you doing, man?
All things considered, I have zero complaints at the time of this recording. Heater up at halftime. Panthers got back in the series last night or in overtime. So things are great. We're doing well.
Yeah, everything is doing well, and it's funny because I want to ask you because it's when you were on, it was after the Florida Panthers had lost Game 1 to the Washington Capitals at FLA Live Arena after blowing the 2-1 lead going into the third period. Let's. I know you said that you're feeling good, but let's have an overall wellness check on Jacob Winans on what have you felt since Game 2 all the way till now.
Yeah. So this, like you said, the playoffs are a roller coaster. So every loss feels like the end of the world, and every win feels like you can't be stopped. So that's kind of how the playoffs go. And right now we're on one of those highs where everything feels great and it feels like momentum has turned, but you have to capitalize on that. So I'm not gonna lie to you, I've been a little more even keeled than I thought I would be. After Game 3, I'm not one of those people who felt like, oh, it's over now. I kind of felt like we might have it in us to bounce back. We'll see, but some changes needed to be made. Those changes were made. It got the job done, and now, like you said, it's a fantastic opportunity now in front of this team, and this feels like the right time to capitalize. So it's been a roller coaster. It's been a lot of up and down already, but that's how the playoffs are, and hopefully we get 3 more rounds of it after this.
No doubt, and this Florida Panthers team, I mean, I felt more confident after they lost game 1 that they were going to win game 2 than I was about them winning game 4 after losing game 3, because of course back they're at home versus on the road, and then how badly they got their wheels blown off in game 3 after losing that 1-0 lead early on. And it's crazy because even in the losses for the Panthers, even though they didn't play their best, they still had leads in both of those games. So I mean, there's opportunities there to make some noise for this Panthers team. And of course, game 1 got away from them. And of course, they found a way to come back in game 4. And just the ups and downs of a series, you even when you don't play your best, you still have those opportunities. Sometimes you play your best and you don't even win. I mean, what a shame what it has been for this Florida Panthers team, who played so well on Monday night against Washington, controlled possession the whole time, of course, lead only allowing 16 shots on goal. Just imagine had they lost that game just after playing so well. So sometimes you don't get the results that you want even when you play a certain way.
Yeah, definitely. It can happen in the regular season where you have a fantastic game and you just get goal lead, or the calls don't go your way, whatever it may be. You can play a great game and lose, and you don't really think too much of it because there's 82 of those. And it's like, oh, well, if we keep playing this way, we're going to win games. But in the playoffs, it can be crushing when you play a fantastic, complete game, you stick to your game plan, it works, but you're behind on the scoreboard. That can be demoralizing to a team. And last night, the Panthers flirted with that. They controlled the game beginning to end. They 100% deserved to win that game. And until the final 2 minutes of the game, it looked like they weren't going to. So to not get down, to not pack it in and complain and, oh, well, this is over, to show the heart that they did to come back and win that one, it speaks a lot about this team. But yeah, it just goes to show you how razor thin the margins are in playoff time. And you can play nearly perfect and it still not go your way. So let's just hope they continue playing this way and continue getting their results.
And who knows, we could have seen an overtime tied at 1-1 had a certain hit not happen on Sam Bennett by TJ Oshie towards the end of the third period. And who knows, maybe the Florida Panthers aren't in that position. But we want to talk a little bit about the Department of Player Safety and their actions taken, or lack thereof actions, on TJ Oshie. Can't necessarily replay the play on the YouTube due to copyright reasons, but I'm going to actually do a screen share of a picture that I took a screenshot of the video that I can share on here. And I'm going to full screen this real quick. All right, so this screenshot right here for everybody watching on the YouTube. Trying to zoom in a little closer. All right, so this is the initial hit. So paused right when initial contact. Hard to tell from here, Jacob. But is he leading in with that elbow first to the chest and then the shoulder follows, or is it like so simultaneous that they didn't see it as? Do they see it as going down to up when it comes to extending an arm, or are they seeing it? Or maybe this could be also a situation where the refs, they could have been behind Sam Bennett and they could have seen his numbers and the hit from the other side too, because those happen where your angles are different. You see the number of the player getting hit, but you don't see the hit from the other side. So that's why sometimes those calls don't be made. As a referee myself, that's where I get caught in angles of a player of the back of a player's jersey. So now that we have that screenshot, the initial hit, what do you see on that play from the initial freeze frame of that hit?
Yeah, so that freeze frame, it tells you a lot, and the replay as well. If anyone gets a chance to watch it, I'm sure most Panther fans have replayed it over and over and over again today. Player safety's missed this one. There's really no other way for me to put it. It's missed on the ice, which is bad enough. It very, very nearly cost the Panthers the game and likely the series. It was that close to costing the Panthers the entire series. Um, it's unfortunate because if the refs aren't going to make the calls, you have to count on player safety to at least issue some kind of supplemental discipline after the fact. But not calling it on the ice, that's egregious. There's no way you can miss that call in that moment of the game. But I can almost give the ref a pass because of the speed it's happening in. But the day after, player safety has had so much time to look at it. I'm sorry, but TJ Oshie, he doesn't have a reputation as a dirty player, but he's also a veteran who's done some things here and there, and sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you don't. He really leaned into the hit. You call it when you play hockey, this is kind of known as the chicken wing, when you stick your arm out and like a chicken wing and catch somebody with that elbow or the shoulder. He kind of chicken wing Bennett in the head. If Bennett, I've heard the argument that it was Bennett's stick that hit him and cut him open. I'm not arguing that, but if Bennett's stick is not there, that is a shoulder directly to the jaw. And it's still the contact. The principal point of contact is still the head. That's why you see the helmet snap back. And I just don't understand how it's missed by player safety. And the fact that there's not even a fine issued it's nonsensical. A 1-game suspension seems reasonable, but to not even fine him, not even give a hearing, it makes no sense. And Armando, I would ask you this: if that hit is delivered by Bennett instead of to Bennett, I don't think there's any doubt he's suspended. The player safety has called his number a couple of times in the past year. There's no doubt if a Panthers player, especially Sam Bennett, is the one delivering that exact same hit, he is in the press box for the next game.
More than likely. They see it as a history for different players. I mean, look at Brad Marchand. that's another example. And TJ Oshie, I even looked up on his Cap Friendly, and does not have a history of being suspended. Has never been suspended in his NHL career. So maybe that was their line of thinking, is like, because they see both the elbow and the shoulder too at the same time. So they might have thought it was the elbow first as well. So, but I could also see how but that freeze frame shows at the same time the contact is to the head at the same time. So that is very worrisome.
I've got one more thing to add on that that you kind of just touched on there. TJ Oshie's lack of a suspension history probably saved him in this, where they assume he's not making a dirty play. But at the end of the day, even if this isn't suspendable by player safety standards, this is the exact hit that you're trying to get out of the game. Those open ice hits up high, coming across the middle, these are the hits that are so dangerous to the player's health, and this is where you see the majority of head injuries and things like that in the NHL. I mean, of course, you have boarding calls and those type of things that are very dangerous, but this is the main thing that the 21st century NHL has tried to get out of the game. And the fact that player safety is just going to continue to let it go because it's playoffs, it makes no sense to me. I also think in the regular season that's a suspension, even if it is TJ Oshie. So I don't know. We can go on about it all night, but it's frustrating and it's just egregiously unfair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fact you said it best. The Department of Player Safety having time to do it and not doing anything about it is the most alarming thing about this. But like you said, we could talk about this for hours, but we're gonna actually transition and talk about when the Panthers won Game 4. Of course, some luck had to be involved in their win, and we're going to talk about that and luck in sports and how teams take advantage of luck that is given, and we're going to explain the context behind all of that. But first, we're going to tell you all about Rock Auto. And with the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand and their warehouse happens to carry, you have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for the last over 20 years. Go to rockauto.com and write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Second segment on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Jacob Winans here from PantherParkway.com on this, of course, Winans Wednesday edition of the show. And Jacob, this was something that I was just kind of thinking about. And, for people listening, you and I were texting a little bit today and just talking about how sometimes teams got to count their lucky stars. But if you go back to all the championships in probably the history of sports, every team has probably had one lucky moment that they took advantage of, or maybe you could change the terminology and call it unforced errors by the opposition or unforeseen circumstances that happen. And I want to name 3 examples. First one is 2003, Steve Bartman, the Chicago Cubs. A fan reaches over for a foul ball when it was catchable for an out. Marlins score 8 runs after. Win that game. Win Game 7 to advance to the World Series. The Miami Heat, 2013. Game 6. Get a few bounces, offensive rebounds, miss free throws on the other side. Ray Allen makes a 3. Win Game 6 and 7. Last one. Tiger Woods, 2019 Masters. Francesco Molinari gets it into the water twice in the last 6 holes. Twice in the last 6 holes, on the 12th and the 15th. Tiger Woods takes advantage of it and doesn't miss the water, gets in the green, and he wins the Masters. And many people forget that he bogeyed the last hole because he played so conservatively on that last one to get the win. So, Jacob, it goes back to my point in all of that is going back to Game 4, that empty net opportunity for the Washington Capitals missing Garnet Hathaway right there, inches. The Florida Panthers talk about game of inches. And we talk about how a shame it would have been that they would have lost if they would have lost this playing their best game with how they dominated the possession. But this might be some type of luck that the Florida Panthers, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I think because every championship team goes through some type of, but this might have been that luck part that the Florida Panthers that might carry them to turning this series around.
Yeah, definitely. Oftentimes that luck you talk about is the turning point in a game or a series. And too often we've seen the Panthers on the wrong side of it. So I'll give you a couple of examples where Panthers-wise, we were on the wrong side of it. Obviously, the Trocheck was tripped game. That's a pivotal moment in that series, and Trocheck clearly gets tripped, and they would have had an empty net goal. We get a Game 7 in Sunrise. Who knows how that story ends? Maybe that's the first year with the Battle of Florida. Who knows? But the Islanders capitalize on the luck they were given on that one, and that's just how it goes sometimes. And then last year, Game 1 against Tampa, we make some unforced errors that they get a power play goal, but at the end of the game, Braden Point gets a breakaway off of a bad bounce on Mackenzie Weegar, and he's got a breakaway, he buries it, and that's the game. So yeah, luck of course plays a part, and it's about capitalizing on those mistakes, or not even necessarily just mistakes, but the good breaks that fall in your favor. You got to capitalize on them. But a lot of times when you get lucky like that in a playoff series, a lot of times you make your own luck. And I'll give you another example of that, and it's the same example you give me of 2013 Miami Heat. That Ray Allen 3 doesn't happen without missed free throws. That's that Garnet Hathaway missed empty net. that Ray Allen 3 also doesn't happen unless Chris Bosh gets the rebound and gives him a chance. And that is the Sergei Bobrovsky save on Marcus Johansson. It's a breakaway. Marcus Johansson can bury that, and the game is pretty much over. Bob makes the save and gives us a chance. So that's not going to be remembered long term. We're all going to remember the OT goal. We're all going to remember Sam Reinhart. No one really remembers Bob making that huge save, but that is the Panthers equivalent to that Chris Bosh rebound. Someone has to give you the chance, and Bob did that last night.
Yeah, Bob. Even though he didn't face a lot of shots, that he was money when needed. And man, those flashbacks to Game 6 at the Barclays Center, and then you just see Luongo just on his stomach once the Islanders break it the other way, and then John Tavares just retrieves it, and then 1-1 going into overtime, and then Tavares does it again in overtime, and that was one of the most heartbreaking losses that I've ever dealt as a sports fan. And of course, I've said this story many times on the podcast. I had tickets ready for Game 7 at BB&T Center at the time when it was called that, and Game 7 didn't happen. So it was just it's always, you think of what could have been in that situation. And like you also reminded me too that Battle of Florida, that could have been the first one too. Like that, I memory serves right. That's correct. It would have been, but man,
yep.
The Panthers, of course, it all depends what happens in Game 5, and of course going into Game 6, we're gonna have a Game 6 for sure. I mean, five series have gone to Game 6s. I mean, we have 5 of them tonight as we're recording this, and just how teams find a way. And of course, another example is in another sport, the New England Patriots. Think about the amount of breaks they've gotten in their 20+ year history, and some of their breaks have led them to Super Bowls. But I don't say that in a bad way. Of course, I'm a Dolphins fan. I can't stand them, but I mean that in a your team is disciplined. Your coach keeps you level-headed throughout the whole mission, throughout the whole journey, and you take everything one shift at a time, one period at a time. Everything is just staying in the present moment as well, and it's just like, here, this is given to you, take it.
Yep, 100%. The Patriots are a good example there. Imagine Marshawn Lynch running from the 1 yard line instead of throwing it on the goal line. That's there's a lucky break for you right there. So yeah, definitely not a negative. You just got to capitalize on the lucky breaks you're given.
That's what good teams do. That's really what they do. And hopefully we see. We don't want to see the Panthers in stressful situations like, Game 4. But hey, we hope to see more of the Panthers finding ways to pull out some thrilling victories. And it's Game 5, whether it's Game 5 or whether it's hopefully what's beyond this first round. But we're going to transition over to the next segment where we're going to talk about Game 5 and talk about our feelings heading towards it. But first, we're going to tell you all about Built Bar. And summer is coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. Throw them in your bag or your kid's backpack. Make sure that everyone has a bar so you're fueled for your summer adventures. The best part about Built Bar? They're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. All Built Bars and Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. Have you tried the Puffs yet? We're crazy about the Puffs. They come in crazy flavors like banana cream pie, even churro. Who doesn't want a protein bar that tastes like a churro? And they're only 140 calories. Sign me up. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Jacob Winans here on this Winans Wednesday edition of the show. So the Florida Panthers didn't practice today. Of course, returning from Washington D.C. on an overnight flight. Andrew Burnett did have a very early press conference. That's a better way of saying it. That's the better terminology that I like using. He had a press conference, and he spoke about Sam Bennett and, of course, having the stitches. Of course, we talked about TJ Oshie and all that. But the Washington Capitals did have an optional practice today before flying over to South Florida. Tom Wilson's still not suiting up for the Washington Capitals in practice, but of course it's optional. Anything can happen. He is making the flight to Florida though, and that is something that we're expecting this whole time. I'm not surprised that he's making the trip. But regardless of whether he plays, man, this is a great opportunity for the Florida Panthers to just back at home. You lost home ice already once. The Panthers going into this game, you just got to be thinking, don't lose it again. Start off that first 10 minutes just like you did in those final few minutes in game 4, and just find a way to feed off that crowd and get the early goal. And the Panthers have done it both times at home, getting those early goals, except blowing one in game 1. But hey, not only get that early goal, but man, I think this is time. I think it's time for when the Panthers go on the power play early to set the tone and finally break through. It's time, Jacob.
Yeah, I think the power play is going to be the key in game 5 here. The biggest thing is stay disciplined. Please, for the love of God, stay disciplined. This is going to be a very intense game. Game 5s everyone knows it's the most pivotal game of a series when tied 2-2. The winner of a game 5 in a 2-2 series wins the series. What is it, around 70-80% of the time? It's a high percentage. So you might want to fact check me on that, but I want to say it's up around 70% of the time. So it's very difficult if you lose a game 5 at home to go on the road in a clinching game and force a game 7. It's a very challenging thing to have to do. So this game is huge for the Panthers. This is a chance for them to show that they have really grown as a team, that they've matured, and that they're ready for this type of pressure in the playoff series. So yeah, absolutely. It's a big one. I'm looking forward to it. And I think the power play is going to be key, definitely. What do we have here? What's the percentage on that?
79%.
79%. Yeah, I knew it was between 70 and 80. So that tells you all you need to know about how important this game is. They've got to come out firing. You cannot come out flat and have a late start and fall behind. So I'm going to give you my, this isn't necessarily a prediction. This is just a blueprint that I'd like to see them follow. In the first period, I would love to see them play scoreless hockey. If you can get a 5-on-5 goal, great. But just stay disciplined. And I think if we get that first power play tied 0-0, I think we score, and I think that sets the tone for the game. And Bruno said this morning, once they get that first power play goal, they feel like the floodgates are going to open. And I have to agree with him. It seems like we're getting closer and closer and closer. We just need to get that one, and everyone will loosen up and start playing a little bit more freely. So, yeah, definitely power play goal tomorrow, or I guess when this drops, it'll be tonight. So power play goal in this one, and then and go from there.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a big one for the Panthers. Looking at the power play shots for the Panthers when they went on the man advantage, they had 4 shot attempts, and they also gave up those two shots against to the opposition, and of course those breakaways for the players coming out of the penalty box, Faravari and Schultz for Washington. And man, Bobrovsky once again on one of them, and then Huberdeau on the back check of another.
We're very lucky that those were not forwards coming out of the box. Both of those names you just mentioned, those are defensemen. So we got very fortunate that those breakaways were 2 defensemen coming out of the box and not forwards.
That's a very good point. Faster skaters for sure. If it were forwards, for sure, getting a chance on Bobrovsky, and of course, hey, we saw an Ekblad breakaway, not too long ago in Carolina, right after the Olympic break. You would, if you never watched the Panthers before and you saw Aaron Ekblad do that, you would have thought that he was a forward. So that's for sure. So,
Yeah.
so yeah. So no, don't anticipate any lineup changes for the Washington Capitals. On the other side, Samsonov is still looking to, at least in my opinion, I think he's still going to start. And I was listening a little bit to Dan Homey again of Locked On Capitals about how Capitals fans are already panicking again to go back to Vitek Vanacek. And Dan said a statement which I agree with. And he said about, you don't want to be having those revolving door around goalies. And I'm like, why does this sound so familiar?
Yep.
Last year with the Florida Panthers, Bob Drieger, Knight, all doing all that. So Peter Laviolette's an experienced head coach. He's been to 3 Stanley Cup Finals, winning one of them. And I don't think he's gonna switch back to Vanacek again. Even if people believe Samsonov's goals were soft, even if he thinks that, but just don't want that revolving door. So I'm expecting Ilya Samsonov to be in the crease again. How about yourself?
I think there's no doubt Samsonov gets to start again. As a Panthers fan, I would love to see Vitek Vanacek back in the crease. He looked very shaky in game 2, and game 1 he gave up a really soft one to Sam Bennett. So yeah, if you guys want Vanacek, we'll take him. We'll take Vanacek in the starters crease for you guys. But I kid, but no doubt I think Samsonov gets the start. He's been good. Had a really strong game 3. Game 2 and that blowout came out and stopped all 17 shots he faced in the third period after Vanacek was pulled. I don't see any reason why they would take Samsonov out. It'll be interesting to see how he handles the pressure of this game. He doesn't have a ton of playoff experience, and until game 3, he hadn't won a playoff game, or he hadn't won a playoff series before. But it's not a situation where he has a ton of experience. I think you still go with him. He's very talented. He's better than Vanacek just by the eye test. And I personally, I think Caps fans are a little bit spoiled in goal. They've had playoff runs with Braden Holtby in his prime, and his backup was Philip Grubauer at the time. So they've never struggled in the net for an extended period of time. I think they're a little bit spoiled. But yeah, Samsonov gets the start for sure.
And let's not forget that Grubauer started both games 1 and 2 against Columbus a few years ago, and then Barry Trotz says we're not going back to Holtby after game 1, and I believe they lost in overtime in game 1 if I remember correctly.
They lost both of those first 2 games. Yeah,
that's right, both of them. And he makes the move back to Holtby, who's been his starter most of the year, and he rides him all the way to the cup. I'm not saying that it's a situation this time, but I mean, sometimes you just got to stick with one, even though we're Panthers fans and we're talking about the opposition. Sometimes for them, they need to stick with just one. Of course, Bobrovsky's starting. We're not having that conversation, which is the best thing about all of this versus last year. And I want to have a few final thoughts and talk more about how the lines for the Panthers and the shakeups, and just I was so worried about how they looked. I was just like, when the Panthers were in their rushes right before game 4, and I was just like, my mindset was, okay, this better work, and somehow it did. And man, what we got to ask ourselves, what's gonna happen mid game if it hits the fan? going into game 5, and then you have those same lineups. It's just like, you got to wonder, what do you go with? Do you go back to those pairings, or do you stick with what you already made those changes of for Andrew Brunette and company? So that's kind of like what I kind of think of, and like I ask myself, is like, what's going to happen in game 5 if anything happens? Because we were surprised. Well, not really surprised. We were asking for changes, and then smokescreen happens, and then the changes happen. You never know what other changes Andrew Burnett's going to pull out of his pocket.
Yeah, definitely. The line changes were a bold move. It was a desperate move, if we're being completely honest. It was a desperation coaching move there to hopefully spark something. And I think it worked for the most part. Now, we didn't get a perfect look at it just because of how much special teams time we saw yesterday. A guy like Anthony Duclair only had 9 minutes of ice time just because special teams were such a big factor in the game, and the ice time was skewed a little bit. I like the lines that we saw yesterday. I wouldn't be surprised to see them changed again, but the biggest thing is splitting up Huberdeau and Barkov, I think, is key. You have to spread out their defense and make it hard on them to not just defend one line. So splitting the two of them up was a big part of it. And I noticed that each line has a guy who can be almost entirely dedicated to forechecking. If we're going to play dump and chase, we need someone who's going to get in behind the defense and go chase that puck. In the top line, you get Marchment there now. Second line, you have Verhaeghe, who's always going to be doing that. Third line, Duclair has the speed to do it. And then the fourth line, you've got Hornquist and Achari. So every line has someone who's going to relentlessly chase that puck. I think that was a key. And then the D pairs, we've all been calling for this change. And the D pairs we saw last night were actually my ideal pairs after the trade deadline. I thought Sherratt had the best hockey of his career paired up with Shea Weber. Aaron Ekblad is as similar to Shea Weber as you're going to find in a defenseman. Very, very similar games. So I think they meshed well together. Forsling Uyghur, it kind of got Uyghur's game back in control yesterday. The two of them together they played a lot together last year. That was our top D pair, and they looked every bit of that last night. And then Montour Gudis, just solid and steady. Montour gets the pucks out. Gudis plays the D zone. I think we stick the D pairs exactly the same as they were last game. Definitely got to roll with that in game 5.
Yeah, and you trade a first-round pick for Ben Sherratt, so you're expecting that. You're expecting him to, if you're going to trade for that, then after being paired with Shea Weber last season on a Stanley Cup final run, who says that he can't be part of a top pair again? So that's kind of like where I think about it as when it comes to Ben Sherratt. And he has the experience there. And of course, both big bodied defensemen. Like after being near the glass at morning skate the other day and seeing like Sherratt skate by, that dude is huge.
He's massive.
He's massive. I never realized how the television can be a little deceiving, but man, this guy's big, and you can sometimes see it on the ice, like how big he is based on like the hits, and like it's worked so far. So far so good with these line shakeups, Jacob. So hoping to see more. It's once again a game 5 at FLA Live Arena. It's right there for the taking for these Florida Panthers. So win, baby.
Yep, we're coming down the stretch of this series. It's exciting and it's nerve-wracking and it's thrilling, and that is exactly what you want in playoff hockey. This is what we've been asking for years as Panther fans. We've been begging for this. So we should definitely enjoy it while we have it. Make FLA Live Arena the loudest building in the league for Game 5, and hopefully they get a W and we can enjoy the rest of this run. I've had a great time. It's been an emotional roller coaster, but man, this is everything you want it to be.
Absolutely. So once again, Game 5 is tomorrow. Well, today, if you're listening to this on the podcast version of the show, 7:30 ESPN2 at FLA Live Arena. Both Jacob and I will be there in person for this game. So driving tomorrow down to South Florida again to be there and cover the game. Jacob will also be there, so it's gonna be fun. Hopefully another fun one. So Jacob, as always, I want to thank you once again for joining this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yes, sir. You can find me on pantherparkway.com throughout the playoffs, as well as my Twitter at Jacob Winans 8. I'm very active there. That's pretty much where I share all my up-to-date insight throughout the games and the series. So, give me a follow if you haven't.
Awesome, man. And make sure to follow him online. Make sure to follow the show account online as well at LO_FLA Panthers. And we will be breaking down Game 5 tomorrow live after the press conferences. So, Jacob, thank you once again, and I'll see you next Wednesday.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey and the Crosscheck NHL show with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark, who will be covering all the postseason activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On NHL. From first-round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.